And Chairman Crawford is the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. He's also an Army veteran, so happy 250th birthday last week to the Army veteran there. Mr. Chairman, has the Gang of Eight, of which you are a member, been summoned together yet?
Not yet. Got some information earlier in the week, but it was not Gang of Eight level, and I've been, trying to keep our committee as up to date on this situation as we can. So we did get a briefing on Monday, but haven't had a Gang of Eight just yet.
Can you tell the audience what the Gang of Eight does and who's in it? I've run through it a few times before, but I think maybe you had a few drills with it.
Oh, sure, yeah. So the Gang of Eight is there's eight individuals who are basically represent the intelligence community and the leadership in Congress. That is myself as chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the House, along with the ranking member Himes. And then over on the Senate side, you have Senator Tom Cotton and Senator Warner. That's half of the Gang of Eight. And then the leadership cadre, that is the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader, and on the Senate side, the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader. That is the Gang of Eight, as we call it, and essentially presidential level intelligence.
So when you get together, I assume you're in a skiff. Does John Radcliffe or some other member of the administration come and talk with you directly about what they think the intel is showing?
They can and have. Typically, the way this would work is that we would get a notification and they would either bring somebody over to brief us. Sometimes they might transmit classified material through secure courier or on a secure line, and we can consume that ourselves. Rarely do we convene as a body. Occasionally we do, but usually it's I'm in my skiff, the Senate's in their skiff, and they just kind of consume that information as it is presented to us.
So, Chairman Crawford, can you tell me? I called you Chairman Atkinson earlier because Rick Atkinson's book is what I've been reading about the American Revolutionary War. You're an Army veteran. Can you tell me what you think the options are that the United States has for the use of force if the president decides to come into the battle with Iran directly?
I think in the short term, obviously, we have an advantage in that we have a fairly sophisticated weaponry that can hopefully dismantle a deeply embedded bunker that is Fort Dow or others, but primarily Fort Dow, where we could exploit that. So Israel lacks that capability, and obviously they would like us to help them, because that's the biggest threat, is that nuclear lab that is several hundred meters below ground. So we have the ability to be able to strike that and help dismantle it. So from a standpoint of how that works, the president can take action if he chooses to. If there was any kind of a commitment of ground troops, that's a different calculation. Obviously, under the War Powers Act, the president does have executive authority to do certain things. That is, if he wanted to do a missile strike or something like that, he could do that without necessarily coming to Congress and asking for our blessing. If there was a commitment of troops, he would have to notify Congress within 48 hours, and then he would only have 60 days to seek either an authorization for use of military force or a war declaration. I'm not suggesting that's ever going to happen, that we would commit ground troops to Iran. I think we can successfully partner with Israel to address their two stated goals, that is taking out ballistic missiles as well as their nuclear capability. I think we can do that with some technical assistance. For example, those GBU-57s that you've heard so much about.
Now, Chairman Crawford, I have to note for the audience, I think the War Powers Act is unconstitutional, but every president since it's been passed has gone through at least pro forma parallel actions that would comply with the War Powers Act, but no president has done it for bombing campaigns. I don't believe President Obama did it for the bombing campaign in Libya, or Bill Clinton did it for the bombing campaign in Kosovo and Serbia. I just don't think it's been used for air campaigns only, so it would be inapplicable here. Do you think it would require an air campaign of weeks, as it did in Libya, or months, as it did in the Balkan War?
I don't know. I mean, we're talking about a pretty effective piece of ordnance here with the GBU 57 that can be devastating and may be sufficient. Um, you know, if you do it, you talk about a single strike. A single strike comprises at least two of those, and maybe more. So we're not necessarily talking about a series of strikes over a period of days or weeks. But even if that were the course of action that the president chose to pursue, he's within his rights to do that. We're not, as I said, we're not talking about the commitment of ground troops. And I think you need to make the distinction there that, so the American people understand we're not suggesting a ground war at all. And that's not even been a part of the calculation or the conversation. But I do think the technical assistance that we can provide Israel to help realize one of their stated goals, that is taking out the nuclear capability of Iran, we certainly have the technology and the capability to do that.
Last question for you, Chairman Crawford. You've watched, as I've watched, in sort of amazement at what the IDF has done and continues to do in a short week. Do you think there are lessons here for how we position our military at home and at bases abroad? Because the strike from Ukraine deep into Siberia and 4 other sites, followed by Israel's rapid destruction of the defenses of Iran, has got to leave the people in the Pentagon thinking, who knows what's in the United States?
Well, I can tell you this, that we did watch the Ukrainian strike, the way that came about, very unconventional in the way they executed that strike to very devastating effect. We can learn from that. If the Ukrainians can engage in that type of thing, we certainly know that other adversaries that are more better equipped and they could certainly do the same thing. So definitely we need to harden our targets and redouble our efforts against adversaries like Russia and China. And then the other thing about Israel, they did a fantastic job from an intelligence perspective in being able to execute this action with such precision. And I think you have to, give credit where credit's due. They're really good at intelligence, and it paid off in this particular instance.
And a last question, Mr. Chairman. Do you think the president has any obligation, not routine, not courtesy, but any obligation to let anybody know anything prior to he does it? I know customarily the president will sometimes brief the Gang of Eight, including you, but I don't think he's under any obligation. Do you believe there is any obligation if it's just an airstrike campaign?
I don't think so. And if you look at the historical context of that, as you mentioned, Bill Clinton, he launched numerous ballistic missile strikes, cruise missile strikes rather, against targets in the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan, and others, and did that fairly routinely. If we were talking about, as I said before, if we were talking about a commitment of ground troops, absolutely. What he may do, and I'm not going to try to put words in the president's mouth, but what he may do is after the fact say, hey, probably everybody speculated this was going to happen. I don't think he's going to come to the podium today and say, hey, I'm getting ready to launch a bunker buster. But what I do think that he would do is he might possibly just give a heads up, but he may not, and he's not obliged to until after the fact. And even then, if there's no commitment of ground troops, he may not even be obligated to explain to Congress in that context. So I do tend to think that your analysis on the constitutionality of the War Powers Act is kind of continues to be a source of consternation for members of Congress, because there are some folks that interpret that differently. And so that remains to be seen. But as it is right now, I don't think he's under any obligation to provide anyone any advance notice.
Chairman Rick Crawford, thank you for joining me. I'm glad we have 2 Razorbacks, one running the House Intel Committee and the other running the Senate Intel Committee. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin the